When thinking about this topic, I really struggled because thinking about how to create a felsic melt when the whole mantle is mafic is a complex topic. Because you'd think, okay, everything's just going to be mafic because the liquidy part of our earth is mafic. So it's going to come to the surface and make mafic melts. And remember, mafic just means a lot of iron and magnesium, generally speaking. Felsic means it has high silica content. Okay, so our mantle, super mafic. And so how are we going to get this to be more felsic with more silica in it? And so there's 3 different ways that are commonly talked about. And to talk about them, we really need to know some basic truths that we should be learning in other parts of our text or our lecture materials. And so here they are, and I'm going to call on these in different parts of this discussion. So the first thing is we just talked about, the mantle is mafic. The second one is going to be that the continental crust is generally felsic, or at least more felsic. So more silica in it. 3 has part A and B. So remembering back to Bowen's reaction series, that if we think about what happens when you melt something, the felsic materials, the stuff at the bottom, the quartz, the muscovite, things like that, they are going to melt first. So they melt first. So felsic melts first. If we think about Bowen's reaction series from the top, where we're cooling things down, our mafic materials form first. They crystallize out and form crystals first. So we're going to tuck these things away and use different ones at different parts. And so here, the first way that we make a felsic, or at least more felsic melt, is through something called assimilation. And I'm going to call on the idea of number 2, which is that the continental crust is felsic. So I'm going to say that we have a mafic, or at least more mafic kind of melt down here. I guess I should have written that, melt. And one of the ways that we can do is to assimilate the felsic material that might be that continental crust. So in this case, my continental crust is going to be felsic. And so as this moves up through, it's actually going to chunk off pieces of this. It's going to get put into there and kind of all around here start to assimilate that material in. So as it's moving around, it's going to melt everything, kind of mix it. And so it will become more felsic. So assimilation is the first way that we get a more felsic melt. Our second way is through something called partial melting. And for this discussion, I'm going to call on 3A, which is that felsic materials are going to melt first. So I'm actually going to start with some kind of rock. So we'll just put this as our generic rock here. And we're going to start to heat it up. So it's solid, but it's going to start to heat up. So what will happen is anything that's on the bottom part of Bowen's reaction series, it's what's going to melt first. So it's going to be our felsic stuff. So the little felsic ingredients in there are going to melt first. So this is all the felsic stuff, and potentially form a melt from that. So you have to picture that on a pretty big scale, but I think you can see how if the felsic material melts first, it can kind of come up and join and create a felsic melt. And that's called partial melting, because if the whole rock melted, then it would just be the composition of the whole rock, which might be like an intermediate sort of composition. Okay, that's the second one, partial melting. Our third way to form a felsic melt or more felsic melt is to use fractional crystallization. And this is just when you're going to partially crystallize something, and it's going to change the composition of the solids. Will have one set of compositions, and then the leftover melt will have a different composition. So this is our melt that we start with, and it's kind of, let's say, just something in between, in the middle. And if we think about Bowen's reaction series, so 3B is what we're calling on here, that mafic crystals are going to form first. So as we move down Bowen's reaction series, we're going to form our mafic stuff first. All right, so we would be forming things like olivine and pyroxene and calcium plagioclase, stuff like that. So these are all of our mafics. And so let's picture all of this kind of dropping down. And so we've got this collection of mafics at the bottom. And so what's going to happen is that when you've removed all of those elements that make those mafic materials, so the iron, magnesium, things like that, what you're going to have left is something that is more felsic. So you have felsic melt, where you've got the mafic crystals, so the solids. So we call that fractional crystallization because you're crystallizing part of this stuff and you're just leaving a remainder that tends to be more felsic. So that will be fractional crystallization, our third way of creating a mafic or felsic or more felsic melt.